Before we begin, tap like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us uncover the darkest corners of the prison system. Now, let's step inside. From cell to cell, how prison transfers quietly decide an inmate's fate, no warning, no explanation, no chance to prepare. One day, you're in a familiar cell. You know the guards, a routine, the faces on the tier. The next day, your name is called. Not for court, not for release, but for something far more life-altering. A transfer in the American prison system. Transfers don't happen loudly. There's no announcement, no paperwork handed to the inmate, no countdown clock. Most of the time, the first sign is a guard standing at the cell door, ordering you to pack everything you own, because in 5 minutes, this cell will no longer be yours. For prisoners, a transfer is not just movement. It is a reset of survival. In that single moment, everything changes. Your safety, your reputation, your access to programs, your proximity to family, your chances of ever seeing daylight again. What most people don't realize is that prison transfers are one of the most powerful tools the system has, more powerful than sentencing, more impactful than parole hearings, and often more dangerous than solitary confinement. A single transfer order can move an inmate from a manageable environment into a violent one, from a low-security facility into a place designed to break people, or from a prison close to home into one thousands of miles away. And it can happen without the inmate ever being told why. Transfers are not random. They are calculated. Behind closed doors, classification committees review files filled with risk scores, intelligence notes, disciplinary reports, and invisible labels that inmates never get to see. A checkbox, a flag keyword, a confidential memo. Any one of these can trigger a move that permanently alters the course of a sentence. Some transfers are labeled administrative. Others are security-based. Many are simply marked for institutional needs. But to the inmate being moved, the reason doesn't matter. Because once the bus doors close, there is no appeal. Prison transfer buses move at night. Windows covered. Routes undisclosed. Inmates shackled in chains that make sleep impossible. Stops are never explained. Facilities are never announced. For hours, sometimes days, prisoners exist in a state of total uncertainty, not knowing where they're going or what kind of prison is waiting on the other side. This is how inmates disappear from the lives they've built behind bars. One transfer can separate a prisoner from family visits forever. Another can place them in the path of rival gangs. Another can quietly send them into long-term isolation. And once the system decides to move you, your fate is no longer in your hands. This documentary exposes the hidden mechanics of prison transfers, how decisions are made, who makes them, and why the consequences are so severe. We'll follow the journey from the moment a name is called, through the transport process, into the new reality that waits behind unfamiliar walls. Because in prison, it's not just a sentence that defines your life. It's where the system decides to send you next. The transfer order, where it really begins. Prison transfers do not begin with a bus. They begin with a file. Long before an inmate is told to pack up their belongings, long before chains are applied to wrists and ankles, a quiet process unfolds inside offices the inmate will never see. Rooms with no windows, desks stacked with folders, screens filled with codes, scores, and notes that carry more power than a judge's gavel ever did. Every incarcerated person in the United States lives under constant evaluation. From the day they enter custody, they are assigned a classification profile, a living document that follows them through every facility, every unit, every transfer. This profile is updated continuously, often without the inmate's knowledge. Security level, custody status, behavioral history, gang affiliations, real or suspected, mental health flags, medical needs, sentence length, public notoriety, institutional risk. Each category feeds into a system designed to answer one question: where should this person be held right now? What the public doesn't realize is that classification is never final. A prisoner who arrived at a medium security prison can be reclassified upward or downward at any time. Sometimes it's triggered by misconduct, sometimes by intelligence reports, sometimes by overcrowding, and sometimes There is no clear reason at all. Inside prison administration, this process is referred to as institutional management. To inmates, it feels more like invisible control. Transfer decisions are typically made by classification committees, groups of officials that may include wardens, case managers, security staff, and intelligence officers. These committees review hundreds of cases, often quickly, relying on summaries rather than full histories. In many cases, the inmate is not present. They do not speak. They do not defend themselves. They are discussed like an entry on a spreadsheet, and the threshold for moving someone is far lower than most people expect. A single incident report, even one that did not result in punishment, can mark an inmate as unstable. An unverified tip can suggest gang involvement. A cell search can raise suspicions. A medical diagnosis can make a facility unsuitable. A transfer request from another prison can be approved without explanation. Sometimes, transfers have nothing to do with the inmate at all. When a prison becomes overcrowded, administrators must free up beds. When violence increases, leadership may scatter inmates believed to be involved, whether proven or not. When a new unit opens, bodies are needed to fill it. In these cases, transfers become logistical tools, not disciplinary actions. And because they are labeled administrative, they are nearly impossible to challenge. Inmates are rarely told the real reason for a transfer. Official explanations, when given, are vague by design. Security needs, institutional requirements, classification review. These phrases carry no details and allow no appeals. For the inmate, the experience is disorienting. There is no hearing, no countdown, no preparation period. The order can come weeks after the decision is made or minutes before transport begins. Many inmates learn they are being transferred only when their cell door opens unexpectedly, and they are told to gather their property immediately. There is a reason for this secrecy. Transfers are deliberately sudden to prevent resistance, manipulation, or last-minute appeals. The system moves quietly because quiet movement maintains control. Once an inmate knows they're being moved, their behavior can change, and the system is designed to avoid unpredictability at all costs. But this suddenness creates another consequence: fear. Inside prison culture, transfers are feared almost universally, not because movement itself is painful, but because every prison is different, and survival strategies do not transfer easily. Alliances disappear. Reputations reset. Protection networks vanish overnight. An inmate who was safe in one facility may arrive at another where their background makes them a target. A prisoner with medical accommodations may lose access to consistent care. Someone enrolled in education or rehabilitation programs may find themselves back at zero. And perhaps most devastating of all, distance. Transfers routinely move inmates hundreds or even thousands of miles away from their families. Visits that once required a short drive now demand airfare. Phone calls become more expensive. Contact becomes less frequent. Over time, relationships weaken. Support systems erode. This isolation is not accidental. Studies and internal reports have long shown that separating inmates from family reduces outside influence and lowers institutional pressure. A disconnected inmate is easier to manage. For lifers and long-term prisoners, transfers can erase years of stability in a single moment. A prisoner who spent a decade building a routine, avoiding conflict, earning trust, can lose everything without committing a single new offense. And once the transfer order is finalized, it cannot be undone. The inmate may never know who signed off on the decision. They may never see the notes that seal their fate. They may never understand why this prison, this distance, this environment was chosen. All they know is that somewhere behind a desk, a decision was made, and their life behind bars was redirected. In the next chapter, we follow what happens after the order is approved, the moment the system moves from paperwork to physical control and the transport process begins. Because once a prisoner is taken out of their cell, the journey has already started. Midnight movement. The transfer process no one sees. Prison transfers don't happen during the day. They happen when the prison is quiet. Most inmates who are transferred will tell you the same thing. It begins at night, long after count clears, when the tier lights are dim and the noise level drops. This timing is not accidental. Night transfers reduce resistance, limit communication between inmates, and prevent unrest. By the time anyone realizes someone is gone, the cell is already empty. A guard stops at the cell door. The order is short. Pack up. You're moving. There is no discussion, no explanation, no destination given. In most cases, the inmate is allowed to bring only what they can carry: legal papers, basic clothing, personal items. Anything left behind is inventoried, stored, or discarded. Years of accumulated property can disappear in minutes. From that moment on, the inmate is no longer treated as a housed prisoner. They become cargo. Before transport, inmates are searched thoroughly. Strip searches are routine. Restraints are applied in a specific order: handcuffs, waist chain, leg irons. The chains are tight by design, not just for security, but to control movement, posture, and speed. Walking becomes slow. Sitting becomes painful. Sleeping becomes nearly impossible. Once restrained, inmates are escorted through service corridors and back in trances that the general population never sees. These routes are designed to avoid visibility and interaction. No goodbyes, no last conversations, no chance to warn anyone. In larger systems, especially federal and state-level departments of corrections, transfers are coordinated like logistics operations. Inmates from multiple facilities may be moved together, grouped by security level and transport classification. They are loaded onto buses or vans with blacked-out or covered windows, often without knowing who else is on board. The bus itself is a controlled environment. Seats are hard plastic or metal. Spacing is minimal. Shackles restrict leg movement so severely that even small adjustments cause pain. Bathroom access is limited or non-existent. Food, if provided, is minimal, often cold meals eaten while restrained. And then the doors close. Routes are not disclosed. Stops are not announced. Inmates are not told how long the journey will take or how many facilities they will pass through. Transfers can last hours, days, or even weeks, depending on distance and system complexity. For federal inmates, this journey may involve multiple transfer hubs, temporary holding facilities where prisoners are unloaded, searched again, housed briefly, and then reloaded onto another bus. These places are often referred to by inmates as diesel therapy stops, locations designed for movement, not comfort. Sleep deprivation becomes constant. Lights remain on. Noise is unpredictable. Inmates are housed in temporary cells or holding tanks with strangers from different systems, different gangs, different regions. Tension is high, but movement is restricted, making conflict both dangerous and unavoidable. During transport, inmates exist in a state of total uncertainty. They don't know where they are. They don't know where they're going. They don't know how long the journey will last. This uncertainty is one of the most psychologically effective control tools in the correctional system. When prisoners cannot orient themselves in time or space, resistance drops, anxiety increases, compliance becomes automatic. Medical needs are often secondary during transport. Prescriptions may be delayed. Mental health medications may be missed. Chronic conditions are managed only at the most basic level. Complaints are rarely addressed unless life-threatening. Communication with family is cut off completely. Phones are unavailable. Mail does not follow immediately. For days or weeks, families may have no idea where their loved one is. Many learn about a transfer only after calls suddenly stop or scheduled visits are missed. For inmates with enemies or known conflicts, transport is especially dangerous. Movement places rival individuals in close proximity without the normal separation protocols used inside permanent facilities. Guards rely on restraints and numbers to maintain control, but tension is constant. And yet, from the system perspective, the process is working exactly as intended. Transfers break patterns. They disrupt alliances. They reset behavior. An inmate who is comfortable becomes cautious. One who is defiant becomes quiet. Movement reminds prisoners of a fundamental truth of incarceration. You do not control where you exist. By the time the transport ends, the inmate is exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally, sleep-deprived, disoriented, stripped of routine. This state is not a side effect. It is a feature, because arrival is not the end of the transfer. It is the beginning of something new. In the next chapter, we'll examine what happens when the bus finally stops, how intake works at the receiving facility, how inmates are reclassified, and why the first 72 hours after arrival are often the most dangerous period of all. Because once the chains come off, survival starts over. Arrival shock, intake reclassification, and the most dangerous hours the bus doesn't announce its arrival. There's no sign, no explanation, no sense of place. One moment the engine is humming beneath the floor, the next it shuts off and silence fills the air. For inmates who have been restrained, sleep-deprived, and disoriented for days, this moment is unsettling. The transfer journey is over, but nothing feels settled. This is where reality sets in. The doors open. Cold air rushes inside. Guards step up, calling names one by one. Inmates are ordered off the bus slowly, chains clanking with every step. No one knows where they are yet. Not the state, not the security level, not whether the stop is permanent or temporary. Arrival is not a welcome. It is a test. Every new facility treats incoming inmates as unknown threats until proven otherwise. Regardless of an inmate's prior behavior, reputation, or time served, arrival resets everything. Trust is gone. Familiar routines vanish. Even prisoners who have spent decades inside must start from zero. The first stop is intake. Here, inmates are processed like new admissions, even if they've already been incarcerated for years. Identification is verified. Property is searched again. Clothing is exchanged for facility-issued uniforms. Personal items may be restricted, delayed, or confiscated outright, depending on local policy. Then comes medical screening. Vital signs are taken. Injuries are documented, especially those that occurred during transport. Mental health staff may conduct brief evaluations, but these are often rushed, focus on liability rather than care. Inmates who report anxiety, depression, or suicidal thoughts are flagged, but flags do not guarantee protection. At the same time, a new classification review begins. This is where the real danger starts. Every facility operates with its own internal hierarchy, intelligence network, and security concerns. The inmate's existing classification file is reviewed, but it is filtered through the lens of the new prison's priorities. A medium security inmate in one system may be considered high risk in another. A low-profile prisoner may suddenly be seen as a liability. Labels change quickly. Gang affiliation markers are reassessed. Regional rivalries matter. Tattoos that were ignored in one prison may carry serious meaning in another. Even an inmate's home state, race, or previous housing unit can influence where they are placed. And inmates have no control over how they are interpreted. Most prisoners are placed in temporary housing during this phase. Intake units, holding tiers, or administrative segregation. These areas are not designed for long-term living. They are designed for observation. Lights stay on longer. Movement is restricted. Interaction is limited. The goal is to watch, not to rehabilitate. This period, the first 24 to 72 hours after arrival, is widely considered the most dangerous time of any prison transfer. Inmates are exhausted. They don't know the rules yet. They don't know who controls the space. And they don't know who might see them as a target. Violence during intake is common and often underreported. An inmate may be placed temporarily with someone they would never encounter in general population. Old enemies can cross paths unexpectedly. Guards are still learning who is who. Mistakes happen. And when they do, consequences are immediate. For some inmates, intake ends quickly. They are assigned a permanent housing unit within days. For others, the process drags on. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. Temporary housing becomes long-term isolation, often without clear justification. This is especially true for inmates flagged as management concerns. These prisoners may be placed in restrictive housing not because of misconduct, but because staff need time to determine where they fit or whether they fit anywhere at all. During this time, access to programs, work assignments, phone calls, and visits may be severely limited. Family contact is still uncertain. Mail can take weeks to catch up. Phone access depends on clearance. Loved ones searching online inmate locators may find outdated information or nothing at all. For families, it feels like the inmate has vanished. For the inmate, it feels worse. Every prison has unwritten rules, customs that aren't in the handbook, but matter more than any posted regulation. How you walk, where you sit, when you speak, who you acknowledge. None of this is explained during intake. Learning these rules too slowly can be dangerous. Learning them too quickly can be suspicious. And while inmates are trying to orient themselves, the institution is making decisions that will define their daily reality for years. Housing assignments, work eligibility, program access, security restrictions. A prisoner transfer close to release can lose progress overnight. Someone nearing parole may suddenly find themselves in a facility with limited programming, setting their timeline back months or years. And once placement is finalized, reversing it is nearly impossible. Appeals exist on paper, but they move slowly, if at all. Inmates are often told to give it time, even when conditions are clearly unsafe. By the time a complaint is reviewed, damage may already be done. What makes this stage especially powerful is that nothing about it feels official. There is no courtroom, no transcript, no public record. Decisions that shape an inmate's survival happen quietly, through internal memos and brief conversations between staff. The inmate may never know why they were placed where they were, only that the door closed, and this is where they now exist. And once they step out of intake and into permanent housing, they carry something with them that cannot be undone. A fresh start, but also fresh risk. In the next chapter, we'll examine how prison transfers reshape power, alliances, and survival inside the yard, how inmates must rebuild their identity from scratch, and why a single transfer can be more dangerous than the original sentence itself. Because in prison, survival isn't about time served. It's about where you land. Power reset. How transfers rewrite survival inside prison. A prison transfer does more than change walls. It rewrites power. The moment an inmate steps onto a new yard, their past no longer protects them. Whatever status they held in the previous facility, respected, feared, connected, invisible, is gone. In prison culture, reputation is local, and after a transfer, reputation must be rebuilt from scratch. This is where survival becomes complicated. Every prison operates as its own ecosystem. The balance of power between inmates, gangs, and staff is unique to each facility. Alliances that mattered in one place may mean nothing in another. A group that dominated one prison may be weak or non-existent elsewhere. For transferred inmates, this creates immediate risk. The first question every inmate faces upon arrival isn't spoken aloud, but is understood by everyone watching. Who are you? And more importantly, where do you stand? In many prisons, race-based or regional groupings control the yard. In others, gangs operate through quiet influence rather than open dominance. Some facilities enforce strict separation rules. Others rely on informal power structures to maintain order. A transferred inmate must identify these dynamics quickly without appearing curious, weak, or threatening. This is where mistakes happen. Speaking to the wrong person, sitting at the wrong table, walking into the wrong section of the yard. Small errors can carry serious consequences, especially for inmates who arrive without local connections. Transfers also disrupt existing inmate hierarchies. When someone new arrives, especially from a different region or system, they are assessed immediately. Other inmates want to know where they came from, what they were involved in, and why they were moved. Silence can be suspicious. Oversharing can be dangerous. Some inmates are tested deliberately. They may be challenged verbally, pressured to take sides, asked to carry messages, pushed into conflicts they don't understand yet. These tests aren't random. They are designed to measure response, loyalty, and usefulness. For inmates who refuse to engage, isolation can follow. For those who engage too quickly, exploitation is common. Transfers are especially dangerous for inmates who were previously protected. An inmate who held a trusted job, a stable housing assignment, or staff goodwill in one prison may arrive in another where none of that matters. Officers don't know them. Case managers don't recognize their name. Any trust must be earned again, slowly. In some cases, transferred inmates are deliberately placed in volatile units. This is often framed as temporary housing or available bed space, but in reality, it can be a way to test behavior under pressure. If an inmate adapts quietly, they may be moved later. If they react poorly, the placement becomes permanent. Transfers are also used strategically to disrupt inmate leadership. When an inmate gains too much influence, organizing, mediating disputes, or commanding respect, administrators may move them to another facility to break that influence. The official reason may be administrative, but the effect is clear. Power is fragmented, and control is restored to the institution. For the inmate, this feels like punishment without charges. There is no misconduct report, no hearing, no opportunity to argue, just a relocation that strips them of everything they built. Some inmates never recover from this reset. Repeated transfers, often referred to by inmates as bounce moves, prevent stability entirely. Each time an inmate begins to adapt, they are moved again. Programs are interrupted. Jobs are lost. Relationships are broken. Over time, this constant instability wears people down. This process has a name inside prison culture: burnout. Burned out inmates become withdrawn, anxious, or volatile. They stop investing in their environment because it no longer feels permanent. And from an administrative standpoint, this makes them easier to manage, but more likely to deteriorate. Transfers also affect mental health in ways that are rarely documented. An inmate who is stable in one facility may develop anxiety, paranoia, or depression after relocation. Sleep disruption, loss of routine, and constant hypervigilance take a toll. Yet mental health support often lags behind movement, leaving inmates to cope alone. Family support weakens further at this stage. Even when contact resumes, distance limits visits. Phone calls are shorter. Conversations become strained. Loved ones struggle to understand the constant changes. Over time, communication becomes less frequent, and for some inmates, stops entirely. Inside prison, isolation is dangerous. Without external support, inmates are more vulnerable to manipulation, recruitment, and despair. Gangs and informal power groups exploit this vulnerability, offering protection or belonging in exchange for loyalty. Transfers create the conditions for this cycle. From the institution's perspective, the outcome is predictable. Movement breaks resistance. It discourages long-term planning. It reminds inmates that nothing they build is guaranteed. For the inmate, the message is clear. You can follow the rules. You can avoid trouble. You can keep your head down and still lose everything overnight. By the time an inmate stabilizes after a transfer, if they ever do, months or years may have passed. Time that cannot be recovered. Progress that cannot be restored. And for some, the transfer itself becomes a defining event of their sentence. Not the crime, not the trial, not the verdict. Just the moment the system decided they would no longer stay where they were. In the next chapter, we'll examine the long-term consequences of prison transfers, how they affect release chances, parole outcomes, rehabilitation, and why some inmates are moved again and again until the sentence ends. Because in prison, staying still is a privilege, and movement has a cost. The long game, how transfers shape release, parole, and life beyond bars for many inmates. The most damaging effects of prison transfers are not immediate. They are delayed. By the time the dust settles, after the chains are removed, after intake ends, after survival strategies are rebuilt, the real consequences begin to surface. These consequences don't show up in incident reports or disciplinary records. They appear quietly, over time, in ways that permanently alter an inmate's future. Because prison transfers don't just move people, they reshape outcomes. One of the first casualties of repeated transfers is rehabilitation. Most prison systems tie programming to specific facilities. Educational courses, vocational training, substance abuse treatment, and behavioral programs are not universally available. When an inmate is transferred, enrollment rarely follows. Waiting lists reset. Eligibility windows close. Progress is lost. An inmate who is months away from completing a program may arrive at a new prison where that program doesn't exist, or where enrollment is frozen. In some cases, participation must restart from the beginning. In others, the opportunity disappears entirely. This matters more than the public realizes. Program completion often plays a direct role in parole decisions, custody reductions, and reentry planning. On paper, an inmate who has been transferred repeatedly may appear unmotivated or inactive. Even the reality is that the system prevented continuity. Parole boards don't see disruption. They see gaps, and those gaps can delay release by years. Transfers also impact work assignments, which are more than just jobs. Prison work provides structure, income, time credits, and in some systems, sentence reductions. A transferred inmate loses their position immediately. Seniority is erased. Preferred assignments vanish. At the new facility, jobs are scarce. Priority often goes to inmates with established histories there. Transferred inmates may wait months for reassignment or be placed in low-value roles that offer no advancement. This creates a compounding effect. No job means no income. No income means limited phone calls, commissary access, or legal resources. Limited resources mean weaker family connections and fewer options for self-advocacy. Transfers also disrupt legal momentum. Inmates pursuing appeals, post-conviction relief, or civil cases depend on consistent access to legal materials and timely communication. When transferred, legal papers may be delayed, misplaced, or temporarily inaccessible. Court deadlines don't pause for prison movement. Some inmates miss filings because they physically cannot access their documents in time. Others lose contact with legal advocates. In extreme cases, entire cases collapse due to missed procedure requirements. And there is rarely accountability. From the system's perspective, the transfer was administrative. The legal consequences are considered collateral. Another long-term impact lies in mental health deterioration. Repeated transfers condition inmates to expect instability. Over time, many stop investing emotionally in their environment. They don't enroll in programs. They don't seek leadership roles. They don't build relationships. Why build something that will be taken away? This mindset protects against disappointment, but it also erodes hope. Inmates become disengaged, withdrawn, or emotionally flat. Some develop chronic anxiety, constantly anticipating the next move. Others become reactive, lashing out when stability feels impossible. Mental health services struggle to keep up with movement. Evaluations are brief. Treatment plans are interrupted. Continuity of care is rare. The system moves faster than support. Transfers also affect release preparation. Facilities differ in how they handle reentry planning. Some offer transitional programs, halfway house coordination, and release counseling. Others provide little more than paperwork. An inmate transferred away from a reentry-focused prison may lose access to these resources entirely. For inmates nearing release, this is devastating. The final months of incarceration are supposed to prepare someone for life outside. Instead, transferred inmates may spend that time isolated, unemployed, and disconnected, stepping out unprepared into a world they haven't touched in years. And then there is the issue of repeat transfers. Some inmates are moved again and again throughout their sentence, not because of misconduct, but because they are classified as difficult to place. They don't fit neatly into one facility. Each move reinforces instability. Each reset makes reintegration harder. By the end of a long sentence, these inmates have lived in multiple prisons, under multiple rule systems, with no consistent support network. They leave custody fragmented. Families feel the impact too. Transfers stretch relationships thin. Missed visits become permanent distance. Children grow up without consistent contact. Partners move on. Parents age. When release finally comes, some inmates step out with no one waiting. The irony is hard to ignore. Prison systems often justify transfers as tools for safety and management, but the long-term effect is often the opposite. Inmates leave less stable, less prepared, and more disconnected than when they entered. And yet, the system rarely revisits these outcomes. Transfers are evaluated for efficiency, not impact. Movement is measured in beds freed, not lives altered. Success is defined by control, not rehabilitation. For the inmate, the lesson is unmistakable. Your sentence is not just time. It is movement. It is disruption. It is adaptation again and again. And while the judge may have decided how long you stay inside, it is the transfer system that decides how you survive it. In the final chapter, we'll bring this journey to its conclusion, exposing why prison transfers remain one of the least visible yet most powerful forces in incarceration, and why understanding them changes how we see punishment itself. Because in prison, the most important decision is often the one you never see. Where the system leaves you a prison sentence is supposed to be measured in years. But for those inside, it's measured in movement, cell to cell, bus to bus, facility to facility. What this journey reveals is uncomfortable but undeniable. The transfer system quietly controls more lives than any courtroom ever will. Without hearings, without transparency, without public oversight, people are moved, reset, and reshaped again and again, not because of what they did, but because of what the system needs in that moment. For some inmates, a transfer means survival. For others, it means isolation. For many, it means losing the last pieces of stability they managed to build. Families are separated. Progress is erased. Futures are delayed. And when release finally comes, the damage doesn't disappear at the gate. It follows people home, into relationships, employment, mental health, and the struggle to reenter a world that kept moving without them. The most powerful part of this system is also the least visible. There are no cameras on the transfer buses, no transcripts from classification meetings, no headlines when someone is quietly moved and forgotten. But these decisions matter, because punishment isn't just about how long someone is locked up. It's about how they're moved, where they're sent, and what they're forced to become along the way. And until that system is understood, prison will continue to shape lives far beyond the sentence itself. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe.